All right, strap in everyone because today we are going deep on cybersecurity compliance.
Ooh, that's a big one.
It is, right? You sent me a ton of great stuff to get through, articles, some videos even.
Yeah, Bert Blevins.
Yes, Bert Blevins, exactly.
He's got some interesting thoughts, that's for sure.
He does. Very strong opinions. But that's what we're here for, right? We're going to wade through all of this.
Absolutely.
And by the end, hopefully everyone listening will have a much better grasp on all this, the compliance side, how to keep your systems safe.
Well, and what I think is so interesting about all this is, cybersecurity people think of it as this purely technical thing.
Right. Firewalls and all that.
Yeah. All firewalls, antivirus, but it's so much more than that. It's really intertwined with
The law.
legal frameworks, regulatory frameworks. It's a whole world unto itself.
So it's not just about having the right tech in place, it's about
Knowing the rules of the game.
knowing the rules.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay, so where do we even begin with that? I mean, every time I open the news, it's another breach, another company, and all these acronyms, GDPR, HIPAA,
Wow.
it's a lot to keep track of.
You're not wrong. I mean, the whole digital landscape is constantly shifting,
Yeah.
and the regulations are trying to keep up.
Right.
It really is a moving target, which is why it's so important to stay on top of it. But maybe it helps to break it down a bit. So GDPR, for example, that's the General Data Protection Regulation.
Okay.
That's like the big one, the big rule book for anyone who's dealing with data from individuals in the EU.
Okay.
So it's all about user privacy, making sure that data is handled responsibly.
So if you're operating in the EU, that's
GDPR is the boss.
GDPR is the boss.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
Then you've got IPA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act.
Okay.
And that one is very specific. It's about protecting sensitive patient data in healthcare.
Right.
It's all about maintaining patient trust, which is absolutely essential.
Yeah, you don't want to be the hospital making those headlines.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's PCI DSS, the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard.
Right.
So think credit cards.
Okay.
Anyone handling that information needs to be PCI DSS compliant.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're opening yourself up to fraud, putting customer data at risk. You don't want that.
No, not at all.
No.
So, okay, different industries, different rules, but ultimately, why should people care? I mean, besides avoiding the fines.
Yeah, the fines. Well, that's the thing. Compliance, it's not just about avoiding penalties.
Right.
It's really about building this foundation.
Of trust.
Trust, exactly. Security. Think about it. You're less likely to stay at a hotel that's known for having bad security, right?
Right, yeah.
It's the same idea. Customers, they're getting more savvy. They're more discerning about who they trust with their data.
So it's almost like a badge of honor.
Yeah.
Showing you're taking security seriously.
It shows you're taking it seriously. And that trust, that translates into tangible benefits for your business.
Right, a better reputation.
Reputation, potentially a competitive edge even. Plus, let's be honest, nobody wants to deal with the fallout of a breach.
Oh, it's a mess.
It's a mess. PR nightmare disrupts your operations, and in some cases, it can even put you out of business.
Yeah, you can, yeah.
So the stakes are high.
Yeah. Okay, I'm convinced on the why. But how do companies actually achieve this compliance? I mean, where do they even start? It seems like a lot.
Yeah, it can feel overwhelming for sure.
Yeah.
But think of it as a journey, not a sprint, right? And the first step is really understanding which regulations actually apply to you.
Okay.
Because it depends, right?
Yeah.
Your industry, your location, the types of data you handle. It's not one size fits all.
So no one size fits all.
Okay, no, not at all. But once you've got a grasp on the regulations that are relevant to you,
Right.
then you can start looking inward. Do a risk assessment, take a good hard look at your current security posture. What are the weak spots? What could those cyber criminals exploit?
So you're almost looking for problems before they happen.
Exactly. It's like a health check for your cybersecurity, You're looking for those things: outdated software, weak passwords,
Gaps in training, maybe.
gaps in training, all of that.
Okay.
And then, based on that assessment, you can start to build policies and procedures that are really tailored to address those risks.
So it's like a rule book almost?
It is, like a cybersecurity rulebook. And you're setting clear expectations for everything.
For everything.
Yeah, password management, data encryption, incident response, you name it.
Yeah.
And then comes the actual implementation.
Right.
Putting those security controls in place to enforce those policies.
Right, so that's where your firewalls come in.
Yeah, your firewalls, antivirus, all the technical stuff.
Yeah.
But it's also administrative.
Right.
Things like background checks for employees or security awareness training. That's something Bert Blevins talks a lot about, the human factor.
Right. Yes, he does. And he's very big on the automating password rotations as much as possible. I think he even mentioned Red Hat Linux environments specifically
Oh, yeah.
as an example.
He's got a point, because even with the best tech, humans are often
Weakest link.
the weakest link. People fall for phishing scams, accidentally download malware, or make, careless mistakes with passwords.
Right.
So those training programs,
So important.
absolutely essential. It's not just about checking a box.
Right.
It's really about cultivating that security culture
Right.
where everyone understands their role.
But I bet some people listening are thinking, well, that's great for the big companies with all their resources, but what about the smaller businesses?
Yeah, that's a valid point. It can be expensive
Yeah.
if you're not strategic about it.
Yeah.
But there are ways to stay ahead of the game without, breaking the bank.
Okay.
Leverage technology, for
Wow.
one. There are some great, very affordable security tools out there that can do a lot of the heavy lifting. Things like compliance monitoring, reporting, even.
Okay, so work smarter, not harder.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to partner with experts.
Yeah.
You don't need a full in-house cybersecurity team. There are consultants, managed security service providers.
Right.
They can offer tailored guidance, support based on your specific needs, and more importantly, your budget.
That makes sense.
That's like having a cybersecurity coach in your corner,
Yeah.
which can be really valuable.
Okay, so if you had to pick one thing, one takeaway for everyone listening so far, what would it be?
The biggest misconception about compliance is that it's just a checklist,
Right.
just checking boxes. But it's so much more than that.
Yeah.
It's really about building that foundation of trust, of security,
Right.
benefits everyone, protects your data, your reputation, ultimately your business. It's investment.
Well said. Okay, let's talk about this idea of just-in-time permissions. I saw that in some of the videos you sent.
Oh, yeah.
Sounds like a smart way to manage access, but I want to hear your take on it.
It is a very smart approach.
Yeah.
It's about managing access more securely, in a more controlled way. So instead of giving users permanent access to everything,
Okay.
you're giving them access only when they need it,
I see.
and only for as long as they need it.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of like,
A temporary key.
yeah, like giving someone a temporary key card instead of, a master key to the whole building.
Okay, and why is that so important from a security standpoint?
Well, we were talking earlier about overprivileged accounts, right? Those are a huge risk.
Right.
And with just-in-time permissions, you're essentially reducing that risk dramatically
Okay.
because you're limiting the window of opportunity for someone to exploit that access.
So even if someone's credentials are compromised, the damage they can do is
Much more limited
much more limited.
because it's temporary, it's restricted,
Yeah.
and what's great is that you can apply it in so many ways.
Okay.
Bert Blevins gives some great examples, talking about how you can use it to manage access to cloud-based systems like SharePoint, Power Apps.
Oh, I remember that. He was talking about granting access to like a specific folder
Exactly.
for like 24 hours just to do a specific task.
Precisely. And then poof, the access expires.
Right, like a self-destruct button for access.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's just one example. But it illustrates how powerful this can be, especially now that so much of our work is, in the cloud.
Right.
And it's not just security, it can also help with compliance.
Oh, so.
Well, think about it. A lot of regulations like GDPR, for example,
Right.
they emphasize data minimization,
Okay.
access control. And just-in-time permissions help you with both of those things
I see.
because you're making sure people only have access to the data they need and only when they need it.
So it's like a win-win.
It is, yeah.
Hmm.
Better security, easier compliance, everyone's happy.
Now, there's this other concept, and I think it's related, privileged access management,
PAM.
PM.
Yeah.
Sounds a little intimidating.
Does sound a bit scary.
What is it?
It's really just about controlling access,
Okay.
monitoring access, but for those really important accounts, the ones with elevated privileges.
Okay, so like administrator accounts. The
Exactly.
ones that can,
Make big changes.
make big changes, yeah. Those are the ones you don't want to get into the wrong hands.
Exactly. Because those accounts, they're powerful, so they're really attractive targets for attackers.
Right.
So at PAM, it's all about putting those accounts under lock and key.
So it's like putting them in a vault.
Yeah, like a vault for your most important accounts.
Okay.
So you're talking about strong password policies, multi-factor authentication, real-time monitoring, even recording sessions for auditing purposes.
So PAM is serious business.
It is, but for good reason, right?
Mhm.
Because beyond the obvious security benefits, PAM also plays a major role in compliance.
Right.
Remember all those regulations we talked about? Many of them actually have specific requirements for how you manage those privileged accounts.
So it's like they're saying, look, if you've got these super powerful accounts, you better be extra careful.
Exactly, exactly. And PAM gives you that framework, that structure to meet those requirements.
Right, to prove to the auditors that you're taking it seriously.
Exactly. You've got your ducks in a row.
Okay, so PAM, it helps with security, it helps with compliance. But does it make life harder for IT teams, or does it actually streamline things?
That's a good question, and it can actually lead to greater efficiency.
Okay.
Think about it. If you can automate things like password management, access provisioning,
Right.
you're freeing up your IT team.
You could do other things.
Yeah, to focus on more strategic initiatives, the things that really move the needle. And that can save time and money.
So it's not just about locking things down, it's about making things work better.
Exactly. And one key aspect of PAM that Bert Blevins talks about is credential management.
Okay, we've talked about passwords, but it sounds like there's more to it than that.
Oh, there's a lot more. We're not just talking about passwords. We're talking about anything that grants access to sensitive systems or data.
Okay.
API keys, SSH keys, certificates, you name it.
Right.
It's about securing those credentials throughout their entire life cycle, from creation to retirement.
So it's like a vault for all your organization's most important secrets?
Exactly, a high security vault. And this is where technology can really shine. There are PAM solutions that can automate a lot of these tasks.
Okay.
Things like rotating passwords automatically,
Okay.
or granting temporary access for specific tasks. It's really remarkable what these tools can do.
That's helpful.
It is. And speaking of helpful tools, there's also the whole session monitoring and recording aspect, something Bert's very passionate about.
Yes, he is. And I imagine those tools can help with that as well.
Absolutely. Session monitoring and recording, they're really essential parts of PAM.
Okay.
They allow you to keep a close eye on what users are doing, especially those with privileged access.
So you can see, what commands they're running, what files they're accessing, all of that.
Exactly, exactly. And this is critical for a few reasons. One, it helps you detect suspicious activity early on.
Okay.
Two, it provides a detailed record, for forensic investigations if something does go wrong.
Okay.
And three, it can even provide evidence for compliance audits.
Right, so it's almost like having a security camera.
Yeah.
It's recording everything.
Exactly. It's a powerful tool for both security and compliance.
Okay, I like it. Let's shift gears a bit. Talk about vulnerability management.
Ah, yes.
So this sounds to me like trying to find all the cracks in your digital walls. Is that about right?
You're exactly right, yeah. It's about identifying, assessing, and ultimately remediating security vulnerabilities in your systems, your applications.
Right.
It's this ongoing process, scanning for weaknesses,
Right.
prioritizing them based on risk, and then taking steps to fix them.
It sounds exhausting.
It can be a bit like whack-a-mole.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. But important, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely crucial. And again, a lot of those regulations, like PCI DSS, for example,
Okay.
they have specific requirements when it comes to vulnerability management.
So they're basically saying you better be actively looking for those security holes.
Exactly. And fixing them before the bad guys find them.
But how do you even begin to approach something like that? It seems so vast.
It can feel that way, yeah. But the key is having a systematic approach.
Okay.
The first step, establish a clear vulnerability management policy.
So that's like your roadmap.
It is. It's your roadmap for how your organization is going to deal with these weaknesses.
Yeah.
And that policy should outline everything, the scope of your program,
Right.
roles and responsibilities, the processes for identifying, assessing, and fixing vulnerabilities. So it's very comprehensive.
So you've got your roadmap.
You've got your roadmap, and then equally important, you need to choose the right vulnerability scanning tools.
So it's not just about manual checks.
No. There are tools out there that can automate a lot of this process. And there's a wide range from open source scanners to much more sophisticated commercial solutions. It really depends on your organization.
Right. How complex is your setup?
Exactly. Your size, your budget. But choose the right tool for the job. That's essential.
And then once you've got your tools, what do?
You got to establish a regular scanning schedule. It could be daily, weekly, monthly. It really depends.
Right. How critical are the systems?
Exactly. How much risk are you willing to tolerate,
Right.
But the point is, it needs to be regular, it needs to be consistent.
So it's almost like a health check.
Yeah, like a health check for your digital systems.
Yeah.
You're constantly on the lookout
Right.
for potential problems.
Yeah.
And once you've completed a scan, You need to analyze those results, prioritize the vulnerabilities.
Right.
Because not all vulnerabilities are created equal, right?
Right.
Some are more critical than others.
So it's like a triage system.
Exactly. You deal with the most urgent cases first. And this is where vulnerability scoring systems can come in handy. These systems, they analyze vulnerabilities, assign them a score based on their severity, how exploitable they are, and that helps you prioritize.
Helps you figure out what to focus on.
Exactly, what to focus on. And, this is something that Bert Blevins talks about a lot.
Yeah.
He's a big advocate for automating as much of this process as possible
Makes sense, yeah.
because it makes vulnerability management much more efficient, much more effective. You can automate the scanning,
Okay.
the prioritization, even the reporting. There are platforms out there that can do it all.
So it's almost like having like a digital security guard
yeah.
constantly patrolling your systems.
Exactly. And another point that Bert makes, which I think is really important, is that vulnerability management, it needs to be integrated
Okay.
with your incident response process.
Okay, so if a vulnerability is exploited, how does that connection work?
Well, if you have a good vulnerability management program in place,
Okay.
you should already have a lot of information about that vulnerability.
Right.
Its severity, its potential impact, even which systems are most likely to be affected. So when you're responding to that incident,
You're not starting from scratch.
exactly,
Yeah.
you already have a head start
Yeah.
because you've been proactively looking for and addressing those vulnerabilities.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
It's all about preparation.
Okay. So vulnerability management, it's not just about finding and fixing holes, it's also about being prepared.
Exactly, if something does go wrong.
Right. Okay, this is really helpful. Let's talk about data security.
Data security, that's the big one, isn't it?
It is. It's always in the news. Data breaches,
Yeah.
cyber attacks, it feels like it's everywhere.
It is everywhere.
Yeah.
And, data is really the lifeblood of most organizations.
Yeah.
Protecting that data,
That's the most important thing.
it's paramount, absolutely paramount, both for your business
Okay.
and from a compliance perspective.
So what does data security actually entail? What does that look like?
Data security, it's a broad term. It really encompasses all the measures you take to protect sensitive data. From unauthorized access,
Okay.
use, disclosure, modification, destruction. You name it, you're trying to prevent it.
Sounds like a pretty big job.
It is. It's multi-layered. You're talking about technical controls like encryption, access control,
Right.
administrative controls like policies and procedures,
Right.
even physical controls like secure facilities.
Well,
You're building a fortress around your data.
literally a fortress.
Yeah, kind of. And one of the key principles here is data minimization.
Data minimization, what's that?
It means only collecting and storing the data that's absolutely necessary.
Oh, okay.
Don't hoard data you don't need.
So it's like decluttering your data.
Exactly. Spring cleaning for your data.
Right.
And by minimizing what you collect and store, you're reducing your attack surface
Okay.
and minimizing the potential damage if a breach does occur.
Less data, less risk.
Exactly. Less is more in this case.
Okay. What about encryption?
Encryption. This is a big one.
I've heard of it, but remind me, how does that work?
Essentially, you're converting data into an unreadable format.
Right.
So it's unintelligible to anyone who doesn't have the decryption key.
So it's like putting it in code.
It is, yeah. A secret code that only authorized people can unlock.
I like it.
It's very powerful for protecting data, both when it's stored and when it's being transmitted,
Okay.
like having a digital lockbox for your most valuable information.
Right.
And then, of course, there's access control.
Access control. That seems pretty straightforward. It's just about who has access to what, right?
It's a little more nuanced than that.
Right.
It's not just who has access, it's also what they can do with that access.
Okay.
You want to make sure people only have access to the data they need for their jobs
Right.
and that they can only do the things that are necessary, nothing more.
So it's like having a bouncer at the data center.
I like that, yeah. Checking IDs,
Yeah.
making sure everyone has the right clearance to get in.
Yeah.
There are lots of ways to implement this. Passwords, multi-factor authentication, even more advanced systems that take into account things like roles, attributes.
Wow. Okay. So you're really controlling who gets in and what they can do once they're there.
Exactly. You want
Yeah.
that granular control.
Okay. But what if something goes wrong, like a natural disaster or a hardware failure? What then?
That's where data backup and recovery come in.
Ah, right. So you're not just protecting against attacks.
No, you got to be prepared for everything
Okay.
because data backups, They're absolutely essential
Right.
for business continuity.
Mhm.
You want to be able to get back up and running as quickly as possible
Right.
if something happens to your primary data.
So it's like insurance.
It is. It's an insurance policy for your data. You hope you never have to use it,
Right.
but if you do, you'll be glad you have it.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, not all threats come from outside.
Right. You're talking about insider threats.
Yeah, employees who might, accidentally or even intentionally compromise data.
Exactly. And insider threats, they can be incredibly damaging
Okay.
and often much harder to detect and prevent
Yeah.
because the individual already has some level of authorized access.
Right, it's like a traitor within your own ranks.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to be extra vigilant.
Okay, so how do you protect against that?
It's tough, but there are things you can do. Strong access controls, monitoring user activity,
Right.
and really fostering that culture of security awareness.
Okay.
You want to create an environment where employees understand the importance of data security,
Right.
and they're less likely to engage in risky behavior, whether it's intentional or not.
Okay.
So it's about trust,
Right.
but also about checks and balances.
Yeah, makes sense. And how does all of this tie back to compliance?
Well, just like with other areas of cybersecurity, data security is often heavily regulated.
Right.
A lot of those regulations we've talked about.
GDPR.
Yeah, GDPR, IPA, they have very specific requirements when it comes to data security.
Right. It's like they're saying you better take this seriously.
Exactly, or there will be consequences. So by implementing strong data security measures,
Right.
you're not just protecting your data, you're also demonstrating to auditors
You're taking it serious.
that you're committed to compliance.
So it's a win-win.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah.
You're protecting your organization and meeting those regulatory requirements.
Okay. Let's talk about incident response.
All right,
I'm guessing this is about what happens after an attack.
you got it. It's the process of handling those security incidents,
Okay.
detecting them, analyzing them, containing the damage, eradicating the threat, and then ultimately recovering from the incident.
So it's like having a plan in place.
Yeah, like your emergency plan.
Right, because no matter how good your defenses are,
Something's gonna get through.
something's going to happen eventually.
Exactly. And that's why having a well-defined incident response plan is so crucial.
Okay.
It's like having a fire extinguisher, right?
Yeah.
You hope you never have to use it.
Right.
But if you do, you need to know exactly what to do.
And you need to have practice.
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
It's not enough to just have it written down somewhere.
Right.
You have to practice, make sure everyone knows their role, and a good incident response plan, it should outline all the steps,
Right.
starting with detection.
Okay, so how do you even know that something's wrong?
That's the first step. You need to be able to identify that something is off, that there's a potential problem.
So it's about being aware.
Exactly, having your eyes and ears open.
Okay.
Then, once you've detected a potential incident,
Right.
you need to analyze it.
Okay.
What's happening? How severe is it? What systems or data are affected?
So it's almost like a forensic investigation.
It is, yeah. You're piecing together the puzzle.
Okay.
Once you've got a handle on what you're dealing with, then comes containment.
Containment. Okay, so you're trying to stop it from spreading.
Exactly. Stop the bleeding, as they say.
Okay.
Prevent it from causing further damage.
Yeah.
This might involve isolating affected systems,
Right.
blocking malicious traffic, even shutting down certain services. It all depends on the nature of the incident.
Damage control.
Damage control, that's the name of the game at that point.
Hmm.
And once you've contained it, you can start working on eradicating the threat.
So this is where you're actually, removing the malware, patching the vulnerability,
Exactly, yeah.
whatever it was that caused the problem.
Precisely. And once that threat is gone, then you can start the recovery process.
Yeah.
Getting your systems back up and running, restoring your data.
Right, get back on your feet.
Exactly. And having that well-tested incident response plan, it makes a huge difference.
Right, and how quickly you can recover.
Exactly. And, this is something that Bert really emphasizes in his videos.
Okay.
The importance of communication during an incident.
Okay, communication. Why is that so important?
Well, think about it. You've got all these different stakeholders.
Right, different teams.
Your IT team, your management team, your customers, maybe even law enforcement or regulatory bodies. They all need to be kept in the loop.
Everyone needs to be on the same page.
Exactly. And clear, concise, timely communication, it can also help minimize reputational damage.
Right.
If you have suffered a data breach, for example.
So it's almost like having a PR team for your cybersecurity incidents.
It is, yeah. It's crisis communication, essentially.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, you mentioned Bert Blevins again, and I know he's big on continuous improvement.
Oh, absolutely.
So incident response, it's not just a one and done thing.
No, it's not a check-the-box exercise. You need to treat each incident as a learning opportunity.
Okay.
Analyze what happened,
Okay.
what worked well in your response, what could have been done better,
Right.
and then update your procedures accordingly.
So you're always getting better.
Exactly. You're constantly refining your response capabilities based on real-world experience.
So you're as prepared as possible.
That's the goal,
Yeah.
because, it's probably only a matter of when, not if, the next incident occurs.
That's a good point. This has been so helpful. It's amazing how much goes into building a robust cybersecurity program. We've covered so much: the frameworks, PAM, vulnerability management, data security, incident response.
That's a lot, yeah.
It is.
But all those pieces, they're interconnected.
They are, yeah.
They all work together to
Yeah.
protect your organization,
Yeah.
to make sure you can meet those compliance requirements, which, as we know, are always evolving.
It's like building a cybersecurity fortress.
It is. It is.
Brick by brick.
Brick by brick.
Yeah.
But you got to be vigilant, right? You got to be proactive,
Always on guard.
always on guard. Because what might be a strong defense today,
Might not be enough tomorrow.
exactly.
Yeah.
The threat landscape is constantly changing.
Right.
So you got to stay ahead of the curve. And that means constantly learning.
Right. Adapting.
I've-
Adapting. Absolutely.
One of the biggest things I've learned from all this is it's okay to ask for help.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have to do everything in-house,
You don't?
especially when it comes to cybersecurity.
Right. Not every organization has the resources.
Or the expertise.
The expertise, yeah.
To handle it all.
And that's okay. It's like trying to build this skyscraper with a hammer and nails, you know? Sometimes you need to bring in the heavy machinery.
Right.
You need the right tools for the job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So whether it's a consultant,
Yeah.
a managed security service provider,
Mm-hmm.
even a specialized law firm,
Mm-hmm.
having those experts in your corner can really make a difference.
It's like having a cybersecurity pit crew
I like that.
ready to jump in and help
Yeah, exactly.
when you need them most.
And of course, we can't forget about technology,
Oh, yeah.
all those tools that can really help.
Absolutely. Automation.
Yeah.
It can be a game changer.
Vulnerability scanning, credential management, even incident response.
You name it. It can streamline so many processes.
Right. And it frees up your team
Exactly.
to focus on the bigger picture.
The strategic thinking, yeah,
Right.
which is so important.
Work smarter, not harder. Precisely.
Yeah.
But even with the best tech and the smartest experts,
Right.
can't forget about the human element.
Right. Because in the end,
Right.
people are often the weakest link.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's often the case.
So what do you do about that?
Well, that's why building a strong security culture is so important.
Right.
You want your employees to be your first line of defense,
Not the vulnerability.
not the vulnerability, yeah.
Right.
You want to empower them
Okay.
to make smart decisions, to recognize threats,
Mhm.
to report anything suspicious.
Okay.
It's about education. It's about awareness.
Right. Right.
You want to create an environment where everyone understands.
That security is everyone's job.
Everyone's responsibility, yeah. It's not just the IT department's problem.
Right. So we've talked about a lot:
Yeah.
ongoing adaptation, external expertise, leveraging technology, building that strong security culture.
Uh-huh.
Is there anything else you would add to that list of key takeaways?
I think the most important takeaway is that cybersecurity, it's not a destination.
Right.
It's a journey.
Hmm.
It's about continuous improvement,
Okay.
learning from your mistakes,
Yeah.
always striving to do better.
Because the bad guys, they aren't standing still.
They're not. They're constantly evolving.
Right.
So we can't afford to either.
We can't. So we have to stay one step ahead.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Right.
we want to leave you with one final question to ponder.
Okay. All right.
Because learning doesn't stop when the podcast ends, right?
It doesn't. What's the question?
Knowing everything you know now,
Right.
what's one proactive step
Okay.
that you can take this week
Okay.
to enhance your organization's cybersecurity posture?
So it can be a small step.
It can be a small step.
Doesn't have to be a huge undertaking.
Exactly. But every step counts.
It does. It does.
So think about that. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and stay secure.
Well said. Until next time on The Deep Dive. To protect your organization, to make sure you can meet those compliance requirements, which, as we know, are always evolving.
They are always changing. It can be hard to keep up.
Yeah. So much ground covered in this cybersecurity deep dive.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. Compliance, data breaches, all of it.
Hmm.
But let's try to, zoom out for a second, crystallize some of those takeaways.
Yeah, make it actionable, right? Because knowledge is only powerful if you can actually use it.
Exactly. So Rewind back to the beginning. You were talking about how compliance is a journey,
It is. It really is. It's not just a one-time thing.
not a box you check.
No, it's ongoing
Yeah.
because the threat landscape is constantly changing. So your security, it has to adapt.
It has to keep up, right? So you're always reviewing those policies, updating procedures, staying informed.
Exactly. You got to keep your ear to the ground, know what's happening out there. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Right. Pace yourself, stay hydrated. And I think this is important. Have a good support system.
Oh, absolutely.
One of the things that really stuck with me was it's okay to get help from the outside.
It is.
You don't have to have all the answers yourself.
No, you don't. Not every organization can handle all aspects of cybersecurity in-house.
Right.
And that's perfectly fine. Trying to do everything yourself, it's like trying to build a skyscraper with a hammer and nails. Sometimes you need to call in the experts.
Yeah, bring in the heavy machinery.
Exactly. So whether it's a consultant, a managed security service provider, even a law firm, having those experts on your team can make a world of difference.
It's huge.
It really is. They can guide you, support you, and make sure you're doing the right things.
And we can't forget about technology.
Oh no, the tools are essential.
All those tools that can help streamline things.
Absolutely. Automation is a game changer. Vulnerability scanning, credential management, incident response, it can all be so much more efficient.
Right. And it frees up your team to, focus on the bigger picture, the strategy.
Precisely. But even with the best technology, the best experts, you can't forget about the people.
Because people are often the weakest link, right?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
So you have to focus on building that strong security culture.
Right. Make sure everyone's on board.
Exactly. Empower your employees, educate them, make them aware of the threats. That's how you make them your first line of defense, not your biggest vulnerability.
So it's about shared responsibility.
Exactly. Everyone has a role to play in cybersecurity.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot. Ongoing adaptation, external expertise, leveraging technology, and building that strong security culture. Anything else you'd add to that list of key takeaways?
I think the biggest thing is to remember that cybersecurity, it's a journey. It's never over.
It's not a finish line you cross.
No, it's continuous. You're always learning, you're always improving. You have to be.
Because the bad guys aren't stopping.
Exactly. They're always evolving, so we have to as well. We can't become complacent.
Okay, so one final question, something for everyone listening to think about
All right.
as we wrap up this deep dive.
Knowing everything we've talked about today, what's one thing, one proactive step
Okay.
you can take this week to improve your organization's cybersecurity?
Doesn't have to be huge.
No, it can be small.
Every step counts.
It does. It really does. Just start somewhere.
Start somewhere. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and stay secure.
And on that note, until next time.
This has been The Deep Dive.